Very good, yes.
You're in a D chord.
Yes, so this is called open D tuning. We've talked a little bit about open tunings.
Yeah.
So now, so the reason I'm in open D tuning, which I'm going to get out of in just a second, but just one of my students earlier today wanted to learn the song "She Talks to Angels" by the Black Crowes. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Okay, that band is kind of a retro band in the sense that they came out in like the 90s, but they sound like a 70s classic rock band,
Yeah.
which is okay with me because I love that stuff, right? The guitar player in that band plays in open E
Oh,
a lot. He likes open E, and he uses that open E tuning.
weird.
So here's the thing though. No, I mean, any of these open tunings, like listen to just, I mean, just the fact that it rings like that is so nice, right? You know? So open tunings are great in a lot of ways. I'm very cautious though about open tunings, especially on acoustic guitar. On electric guitar, it's not as big of a deal, but on acoustic guitar, I usually will only use open tunings where I loosen the strings from standard tuning. Because if I tighten the strings, there are two things that could happen. Obviously, one thing that could happen is you could break the string. That's not that likely to happen unless you really go nuts cranking the knob. But the other thing that can happen is when you tighten the string, you're adding more tension to the neck of the guitar, and that can cause the neck to warp, to bow. And that's bad, okay? It's less of an issue on electric guitars, but on acoustic guitars, the neck can bow very easily. There is a thing that you can do if the neck bows. There's what we call a truss rod, which is a metal rod that runs the entire length of the neck. Now, on my guitar, on a lot of acoustic guitars, to get at that rod, I would have to unscrew that plate.
Oh.
And then, do you know what an Allen wrench is?
Yes.
Okay, so you would make an adjustment with the Allen wrench. This is not something you want to do unless you know what you're doing, because if you do it wrong, you can literally, if you tighten the rod, you're tightening or loosening the rod depending on which way you're turning. If you turn the wrong way, you can make the neck worse, obviously. Like if you're supposed to tighten it and you loosen it instead, it's just going to bow more. But you can also snap the rod if you tighten it too tight, and then the guitar really is pretty much garbage at that point. There's not much you're going to be able to do with it. On your guitar, the access to the truss rod. Are you serious? This guitar doesn't have a truss rod?
Doesn't it?
It doesn't look like it. Usually, if there's no plate up here, sometimes with Fenders they don't even put a plate. They just scoop a little hole out, like a little spot out, and you'll see the truss rod sticking up. But otherwise, it's almost always accessed right down there, and there's nothing there. So you don't have a truss rod. So it's even more important for you not to go nuts with changing the tuning on that guitar, because if you warp the neck on that guitar, there is no fix. There is one fix you can do, but it's not a really good fix. The fix would be you would have to have the neck steamed so that the wood gets soft, and then you have to clamp it in straight again and hope that when it dries it stays straight. So none of that's really good, and you don't want to do it. So what I usually do, so for example, for this song, as I explained to my student, if I go to open D tuning and I put a capo on the second fret, then I'm in. Perfectly, it works just like open. It is open E tuning, but I didn't have to put the stress on the neck. So keep that in mind, especially now that I know that guitar does not have a truss rod, because you will want to be a little more cautious about that. So, let's start with a couple finger exercises.
Okay.
have you started doing any of those double hammer exercises?
Yeah.
Very good. Can you do 2, 3, and 4? That's much harder. Good. Very nice. So, because you're doing such a good job with that, I'm going to give you a much more challenging one to work on. And so this one works like this. You're going to start on the first string, you're going to hammer first from the first finger to the second finger and then the pinky. And right away you can see what the tricky bit is.
Yeah.
Right. On this string, it's 1, 3, 4, so that's a little easier, I think. And so you just keep alternating. 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, like that. Good, good. So obviously that's a little tricky, and it'll take a little time to get used to that. Well, that 1, 2, 4 finger combination is especially difficult because of that third finger. It's a little easier to keep the second finger out of the way, but that's good because now that we're starting to do these more complicated guitar licks, you need to get your fingers up to speed to do all those. And so far they've been doing fine, but you know, the more workout you give them, the better. So. Okay, so let's jump right into our song. How far did you get? Were you able to pretty much do the stuff that I showed you last time?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'd like to go from the beginning if you can. Okay. Just a little bit because I think you basically got it right, but there's 1 or 2 things I just want to double check. I think sometimes I don't even bother to pick all of those. He's doing that, but sometimes I'll get lazy with that and do it like that, and that's okay too. What?
That's what I've been.
So you've been doing all hammer and pulling?
Oh, I know.
No, I thought you were picking it. Yeah. Picking it, you know, is actually a little bit easier to keep it rhythmically correct. It's a little harder to do all with the left hand without any pick. But so then this is the part that I think it was almost right, but not quite. Like so. So let's just go over that, and then we can start to look at some more. There's an open. Same thing as before. Open. Okay, so that's much better. I think you got it.
Alright.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. So, a couple of things that we want to do. The first important thing, I think, is we need to go over the backup part for the solo,
Okay,
because
cool.
it is a different chord progression that they play for the solo. Okay, it's not hard. You'll have no problem with it. It's way easier, pretty much, than everything that you've done so far. But you still have to know it. So it goes like this. You're going to start. You might want to use 3-string power chords for this
Okay.
instead of 2-string, only because it's going to give you a little bit fuller sound.
Alright.
So, so what we have is here is we're going to start on the 9th fret, on the 5th string rather, 9th fret, and we're going to play a 3-string power chord. The 3-finger power chord just adds the pinky. Right. So all you're doing there, and you're adding an octave of the note of the root note, and it just beefs up the sound a little bit. So, so if you think about it, since this and this are essentially the same, knowing when to use which, it's not that difficult, to be honest. If you have enough time to move 3 fingers and you want a fuller sound, you'll use 3 fingers. If you don't have enough time to move 3 fingers, you better just move 2, because that's going to be the main deciding factor. Sometimes you have to be careful, because sometimes you're fingering what appears to be a power chord, but you may be picking another string somewhere in there, and that might make a difference. So, for example, you'll recognize this, I think, hopefully. Maybe not.
No, what is
It's before your time, huh?
Sounds familiar.
Aha. So that's the beginning of the Metallica song Fade to Black.
Ah, I knew it was Metallica. Okay.
Okay? And you'll notice what he's doing is he has a power chord shape, but he's picking that open 3rd string, which means you can't do this. In fact, in general, when you're doing a picking thing rather, I think you understand this pretty well. When you're doing a picking thing rather than strumming the chord, it doesn't matter what chord it is, power chord, open E chord, whatever. If you're picking the strings, you have to use the fingering that the guy used on the recording, because otherwise it won't sound exactly right. It'll sound pretty close. It won't sound horrible, but it's still not going to be quite right. So in any case, here we're strumming. So I think the 3-finger guy just gives you a little bit more muscle. Right. So the strumming is 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to move down 1 fret. 2 frets. Right. Then we're going to do back to the 5th fret. This time it's just 3 quarter notes, no extra 8th note in there. Sorry. That's it. So this one we only strum 1. Let it ring for 2 counts. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's open A. Then 4th fret on the, and we end up on our power chord on the 6th string 2nd fret. What can you tell me about that? Here, listen to that for a second.
octave apart?
Yes, very good. As usual, you're the man with the golden ear. Here's it again. Very nice. Okay, yeah. So you're basically just walking down a scale and going down to it till you get to the octave. So let's try it out. Pretty simple. And then right there. So you only hit that chord once, 3 times on that. So it's basically okay. For the first two, it's 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one's a little different. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, 4. And then one strum for 2 counts. 1, 2, and then 3. Right, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. No. There you go. That's right. What note is that?
F.
I think that's F.
Oh, F sharp.
Right. Okay. And so now you know.
Oh, that's the same power chord as in the other person.
Yeah, it's exactly the same chord. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, I want you to understand that. Yes, that's what I was saying about the difference between the 2-finger chord and the 3-finger chord.
Oh.
When you play this 2-finger chord, you're playing 2 notes, F sharp and C sharp. That's why that chord is sometimes called a 5 chord, because F, G, A, B, C. They're 5 notes apart. And by the way, that's something that since we're talking about that, you need to understand that about pretty much all chords, okay? The name of the chord tells you what notes are in the chord. You need a little bit of music theory background to understand that, but like for example, when you see even when you see these crazy jazz chords like E7 sharp 9.
What?
Yeah, what? Oh my gosh, you see that and you're gonna this is gonna be too hard, I'm not gonna do it, right? They're just chords. They're just like they're just fingerings, and you just have to learn them. But the name of the chord tells you what notes are in the chord, because an E7 sharp 9 is an E chord with the 7th note of the scale added to it, and the 9th note added. But the 9th note is not the regular 9th note. It is raised by 1/2 step, which is on the guitar 1 fret. So 7 sharp 9. I have E, add the 7th note of the scale, and it's always of the E scale. That's what we're talking about. Add the 9th note of the scale. So those names, even though the names of the chords sound really crazy, if you have a little bit of music theory knowledge, and you have a little bit of, more than a little bit, if you know the fretboard well enough to know where to find all those notes, you can figure out how to play chords that you don't know.
You know that chord?
Oh yeah, that one I know for a long time, because that's the Jimi Hendrix chord.
Oh, okay.
That's this one. Do you know that chord?
No.
Oh, you want to learn this one here. We'll take a quick moment out to learn this chord shape. This is a movable chord shape if I only play the inside strings 5, 4, 3, and 2. So that guy should be on the 3rd string. Move that down, and then my pinky is here. Right. Now on this chord, I can play all 6 strings because this is an E. So playing the 2 open E strings is not going to create any problem. Sound familiar? Watch that pinky.
That's cool.
It's a cool chord, isn't it? Now, once again, this chord is movable as long as I don't play those. If I play just those 4 strings, then, right, so that would be a D 7 sharp 9. This was an E 7 sharp 9 because this is note. Right. And so on. So that chord. Right, so that's Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix, right? That's why Jimi Hendrix really liked this chord, and so that's why it's among guitar guitar players, that chord has sometimes become known as the Jimi Hendrix chord. But a lot of other guys have used it as well. So you know, I mean, it's a very bluesy sounding chord, isn't it? So in a bluesy, in a straight 12-bar blues, like if you were playing some Stevie Ray Vaughan, you'd get that chord would be a very good, useful chord. But even like, here's another old classic. You know this one at all?
No.
Okay, this song is a song by the Beatles. It's called Taxman. Okay. And interestingly, Stevie Ray Vaughan did a version of it. Stevie Ray Vaughan did a bunch of cover versions as well as being, writing his own stuff. So, okay, so the name of the chord tells you what notes are in it if you have a little bit of knowledge, background music theory knowledge, which I'll be giving you a little bit at a time. But for us right now, so when you have this chord, which is called, the technical name of a power chord is a 5 chord. So this is an F sharp power chord or F sharp 5, and it's just because it's an F sharp and the note that's 5 notes higher than F sharp. And we don't even have to worry about what that note is right now, although I'll tell you it's a C sharp, but because this fingering automatically gives me that relationship on the guitar. When I add this finger, it's the same chord. All I've done is I've added another F sharp. This note and that note are the same note an octave apart. So by adding another F sharp to the chord, have I changed the sound of the chord?
No.
Well, yes and no. I mean, you're right. It doesn't change the fundamental sound of the chord. It just makes it sound a little fuller because there are 3 strings ringing instead of 2. But it's still the same chord. And that's why when I said before, there are times when you will definitely need to use the 3-string chord. So for example, everybody knows this one, right? Although most people play it wrong.
I've seen a ton of people play that on YouTube and everybody plays it a different way.
And they're all wrong.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if you listen to me, can you tell that that's the way that it sounds on the record? That's what he's doing. Now there are a couple of ways you could finger that. I mean, so I could possibly, instead of doing, I could do it like this. All I'm doing is I'm swapping this way of playing the chord for this, and it just it's not any real difference there. So, but when you see guys doing this, that's totally wrong. That's not even in the right key.
I saw someone playing like over here. It was so weird.
Yeah, so once again, part of the thing about the guitar stuff on the internet is that you have to always be paying attention to how, like, okay, sometimes, to be honest, the guy sounds like it sounds pretty much like the thing, and then after you play it for like, so let me see if I can give you, here's an example of that, okay? So I played this riff, I don't want to say I played it wrong. I eared it out, and this is the riff from the Led Zeppelin song, Whole Lotta Love.
Okay. Oh, I
Now, that's exactly the way Jimmy Page is playing it on the record. When I first learned it, I didn't get this little bit. So I just did this. Now the chances are, if you heard somebody doing that, you would be like, yeah, that's a whole lot of love. Sounds like a whole lot of love, right? But what he's really doing here, he's doing this. He's hitting these 2 strings together, and he's bending this one a little bit out of tune, so you get this. Oops, hey, sorry. Now finally, after I've been playing that song for like 5 years, somebody who played guitar better than me showed me that trick, and I was like, yeah, that's it. I hear it now that I hear it. Now that I'm playing it, I hear that what I was doing wasn't quite right. And I can understand that, sometimes people, when they think they've got the song figured out totally right, they don't always get it 100% right. And then there are the ones who get it so totally wrong that you're like, how did you even think that this sounded like the song, Like if you're playing it in the wrong key, it's probably not right. So, anyway, so the reason we're getting off on tangents here, I do want to get a little bit more of that song. Actually, I forgot. No, that's not the song. So the reason I brought up Smoke on the Water is because everybody knows that main riff. How many people know how to play the verse?
Oh, that's in three.
That's the verse. It's just the 3-string power chord. But if you don't use the 3-string power chord, it's not right. So it's just the 3-string power chord. One more. So it's like this. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just one. That's the, otherwise, it doesn't get a whole lot easier than that to play, and it makes me wonder why all these guitar players who learn that main riff correctly or incorrectly don't bother to learn the rest of the song, because the rest of the song isn't hard except for the solo. The rest of the song is pretty simple, but you have to use that 3-string power chord, otherwise it's not going to sound quite right. On the other hand, if you were playing Don't Fear the Beeper, here, like the Metallica song, I have to use the 2-finger one because I have an open string, 2 open strings included in there, and if I do this, no, that's not right.
Where have I heard that song?
That song is called Don't Fear the Reaper. It's by the band Blue Oyster Cult, and
Was that in
it's
the
been in
SNL
like
clip?
every other horror movie for the last 20 years has had that movie in it. So
Is that the cowbell clip
yes,
from SNL?
yes,
That's how he
the
knows
more
it.
cowbell.
Yeah.
Yes, there you go.
That's
That's
the
it.
Where
cowbell
I
clip.
heard that from.
Yes, that's the cowbell song for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so you let's go through that chorus. I mean that solo riff one more time, and then what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to show you another one of the big fills that you need to learn, and that's probably all we'll have time to do today, but that's enough to work on. So. Now, so the timing: 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4, just 1, 2, 3, 4. Just open. You could do 5th fret, but A open is so much easier. Back to the open A. So A, G sharp, A. Power chord though. Right. And I'm going to use the 3-string power chord here too. Just for consistency. Yeah, if you're using it through all the others, it's probably a good idea to do that. Okay, any questions? Let's do it one more time. Good. Right, that goes for 4 counts. You can use Good. Yeah, it's not that hard. Okay, good. Now, the next fill that I'm going to show you is the fill that replaces this one. The second time you get to this, the second time you get there, you play a different fill.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. So this is a fun one because it's not quite as hard as it looks, even though it's not necessarily, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's not as hard as it seems, okay? So you're going to start, some people like to use the second finger here for reasons that you'll see in a minute, but I like the third finger. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by just playing those two. And now we're gonna start to do some, a pull-off kind of lick that you're gonna see quite a bit in especially more harder rock and metalish kind of guitar playing. So I'm gonna stretch my pinky here up to the 9th fret, and I'm gonna pick that, and then I'm gonna pull off to the 5th fret.
Oh, is the third finger on the?
Third finger, you definitely need to keep either the second or third finger. It looks like for you like the second finger might be easier, but you need to have that finger down because this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pick, and by the way, when you do the pick, you're gonna wanna use an upstroke here. Make sure your first finger's really down, because if you... Right. So basically what you're doing here, so after you play it, and then you're just going to slide this up. So the first three go like this. Then I'm going to bring that, so that was 9, 5, 7, 10, 6, 8, 11, 7, 9, like that. Then I bring that 7th fret finger up to the 8th fret. Do the same lick again on that fret. And then I'm just going to move this shape up to frets 12, 9, and 10. Keep going. When I get to this position where my pinky is on the 17th fret, and my first finger is, I'm sorry, one more. When my first finger is on, pinky's on the 18th fret, and my first finger is on the 15th fret, I just do that and let that note ring. So. Easier said than done, but not as hard as it sounds on the record. So try it. The main thing here is all the stretching. It's going to require a bit of stretching. So you're right. You're going to start with 5 and 7. Good. Not too bad. There you go. Let's move it up 1 fret at a time. So both fingers have to move up. See how, so you still have to keep the stretch between 1 and 2. Right, so you should be on frets. Right, 10, 6. Yep, one more. Just careful, too far. Right, first finger's on 7. First finger's on this. Yeah, you're still a little too far. So this, I'm going to do this real quick because I have my next student waiting. But so it starts off with these numbers. You have 9, pull off the 5, 7 on this string. 10, pull off to 6, 8 on this string. 11, pull off to 7, 9 on this string. Move this finger up to 8. So we're going now. I'm going 11, 8, 9, 12. 9, 10, 13, 10, 11, 14, 11, 12, 15, 12, 13. Okay? So do what you can with that. We may need to go over that a little bit more because it's a little bit tricky. But at this point, there's not too much more. There's like 1 or 2 other fills that we have to do, and then of course the solo. But otherwise, everything else you now have, so you should be in pretty good shape with this. All right, so that'll do it for today for sure.